I feel that wisdom is humanity's greatest wasted natural resource. I'm trying to help solve this injustice of the lack of wisdom transfer from one generation to the other. I don't have all the answers, and that's why I created the Wisdom Transfer Platform to get everybody to share their wisdom. They'll hear something that I've said 10 times, and they'll hear it from another source and be like, oh, that's a great idea. Like it was the first time they heard it.
People don't listen to people preaching, wisdom. They want to engage. How do you manage that fine line? Welcome to the Stubbornly Young podcast for people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who want to stay engaged in the world and relevant to the younger people in their lives. I'm Dave Tabor, and like you, I'm on a journey of figuring out what middle age is, and as I get older, moving forward in a way that's exciting and purposeful for me. I don't have the answers. I'm exploring by talking with lots of people who have ideas that can get me closer, and I created Stubbornly Young to share my conversations with you. This is episode 24, and I'll be speaking with Ed McCarthy, author of Life Letters, 5 Decisions to Wealth, Wisdom, and Happiness. Ed's book is a pleasant read, and it makes me really wonder about how to deliver my wisdom to my kids. Do they even want it, really? And maybe my wisdom to others who might be, would they be eager, possibly, to have it? So, Ed, glad we're talking today. Glad you're on Stubbornly Young.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, normally, because I'm an impatient sort, I dive right into the content. I think in this case, it would be useful for listeners to understand just a little bit about what you were doing before you took on this project.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I guess first and foremost, I'm an accidental author. It was never intended. I never said, I want to write a book. Before I became an author, I spent 30 years, 3 decades, and ultimately CEO of several software companies. So I spent almost 3 decades in the high-tech industry. I pivoted at the same time while I was still in high-tech. I started to get into real estate really after the 2008 crash, and got heavy into real estate. So then I built a real estate empire through another entrepreneurial venture, and that kind of led me to this next phase of my career, being stubbornly young, continuing to be stubbornly young, reinventing myself, and trying something new, which is this Life Letters, which, it's a quick snapshot of the book. This is what it looks like. It's the Life Letters, and it's 5 decisions to wealth, wisdom, and happiness. And the whole premise is follow the path to your highest self through optimal lifestyle design. So it's been a really fun adventure and helping to keep me young.
Yes,
keep you sharp.
Yes, and what's intriguing, I got to start with the very beginning. This is sort of like a passion for you to share, and it says so in the dedication, to your children. That you wrote. I'm going to read this. I wrote this book of life letters to share what I've learned during my journey. Sound advice, while heeded, can make all the difference. So I've got 2 adult sons, and I always wonder, my wife constantly reminds me that maybe our kids don't want my advice. Maybe the wisdom that I believe is so massive in my brain waiting to get out, maybe they just don't want it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I find wisdom of the older the crowds, either they don't call it the grandfather, like a grandparent level, or the parent level, especially with adult kids and teenagers. I feel that wisdom is humanity's greatest wasted natural resource. There's so much wisdom at every different generation across the board that we should have more in our societal framework, that we should look for the younger to look to the middle age to the older and share that wisdom openly. But there really has been no mechanism to do that. Other cultures do. I've spent time in Japan and their Asian cultures tend to gravitate towards respecting your elders and listening to them for advice. We don't really have that so much in the West, and it's unfortunate. I think it's the fault of everyone, or the loss of everyone, and that's why I created, through this Life Letters book, has morphed into many different things. It became a bestseller. We have sales in 11 different countries. It's being converted to different languages. It's being nominated for book awards. It's been really transformational. But one of the fallouts of that is I'm trying to help solve this this injustice of the lack of wisdom transfer from one generation to the other. So I created what we call the wisdom transfer platform, and it's on our website, which is thelifeletters.com, THE lifeletters.com. And the wisdom transfer platform is just that. It's a first of its kind social media platform for others to share their wisdom with the world, right? So, and I think it's going to be really well received.
Yeah, and you can and the readers of your book are encouraged to submit to this portal, to this
Yeah,
website. Now, it's kind of like the proverbial, if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it make a sound? If all people your age, my age, all of us wise guys, no, wise people have all this wisdom, all this life lesson, like if we want to share it, but young people, I mean, to me, it's almost biological that they don't care about this stuff until they get older, where they've
right.
learned the hard way. So, like, is this just like that? If a tree falls in the woods and no one hears?
Often is, unfortunately, but it shouldn't be. That's the injustice, right? So, and I think we can create, and I have been, building a movement around this to try to address this injustice. And that's what I refer to as the wisdom transfer platform. And really what this book is, life letters, right? It's my life in letters, and it's A through Z. And ultimately, it's my best attempt to transfer my wisdom to really, I wrote it for my kids who are now teenagers, right? Late teens. And so it was my best attempt to share my experiences to them. And but I'm just one guy with one life and one life's experience. I don't have all the answers. And that's why I created the wisdom transfer platform, to get everybody to share their wisdom for those that are actually seeking it.
I got to dig into this a little further, because you can round up 1,000 me people and you people and our spouses and others, and there are thousands of us all adding wisdom. What evidence do you have so far that younger people are looking at it, reading it, using it, experiencing it?
Oh, I that's been one of the pleasant surprises through this. I mean, I when I wrote this, I was hoping if the book would be, all the effort is a tremendous amount of time and effort. And I thought, how do I measure success? Like, how do I measure if this was worth it or not? And I looked at it as like, if only 2 people read it, my 2 children, then it was worth it, right?
Yeah.
But this has morphed into something that I never really expected. That goes back to the accidental author. The reviews that I'm getting, and you're welcome to look at them up at Amazon, at Barnes and Noble, all over our website at thelifeletters.com, are mostly from the young, right? They're, millennial, Gen Z, Gen X, different people. And you can see they reference themselves like, this is a must read for my generation. So I think there's a tremendous thirst from the young to listen to the wisdom that is out there and learn and grow from it. So I think what I've found it's been so inspiring to me, is many reviews, you can read them yourself online, I'm not making it up, is that many people are looking at me like, you're the father figure I never had. Right? I had either an absentee dad, or I had a dad that just simply wasn't involved, it wasn't engaged. And I'm giving them that fatherly advice, that guidance on how life works and how to be successful in life and how to have optimal lifestyle design. And so there is without a doubt, there's a massive thirst for the young to learn. But they're selective on who they listen to.
Yes, well, and to that point, that was exactly where I was going to go next, Ed. Are they listening to you? Let's say they did have a father figure, or a mother with wisdom, and whatever the case. But like, are they listening to you because you aren't their father? Like, that's what. Like, I think if I wrote my letters and then I put them up on a website with a bunch of other guys, smart guys like you, or women like my wife, people would read theirs. But like, my own kids might not be as interested in what I have to say. I don't know. Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even with my own kids, I mean, I'm super proud of both my kids. They're really smart, but they'll hear something that I've said 10 times, and they'll hear it from another source and be like, oh, that's a great idea. Like it was the first time they heard it. And I'm like, wait a minute, what about,
Yeah,
what
that's right.
about the fact I told you this a dozen times? And
That's
so
so funny.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
human nature is that, and usually I found that, at least for myself anyway, is when I turned about 25 years old, all of a sudden my parents were smart.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
They were like, oh, they don't know anything. And then all of a sudden I look back and go, wow, they actually weren't as dumb as I thought they were. And I think it just comes with just maturity, comes with age
Yeah.
and acceptance, and the natural rebel part of being
Yeah.
young.
So maybe the sweet spot isn't really like teenagers who you actually wrote for, but maybe the sweet spot is, to your point, once young people start to mature and they end up independent in their lives, that maybe they start valuing this kind of thing more than they would when they don't have a worry in the world.
Yeah, well, I'll do like one slight correction. I did not write this for teenagers. My kids are teenagers now, but I wrote
Ah,
this. I wrote this with the mindset of who I envision them. I call it avatar. So I envision what their avatar, what they would be like, where they would be approximately 30, 30 to 35. They
I
got through
got it.
college, they
Yeah,
started
yeah,
life.
yeah.
Maybe they're at or slightly considering marriage, that type of level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pre-kids or soon to have kids. And now they're ready to listen. And so I wrote it as that 30-year-old range. But what I've found is there's three different levels of people that gravitate to this book. There's the young that I would call they're trying to invent themselves, right? They say that 30 or less than 35-year-old range. They're trying to invent their life. They're trying to create their careers. They're trying to invent who they're going to be. And then there's they call it the middle age, close to the middle age, that 35 to 55 or 60 who are trying to reinvent their life, right?
Mm.
Maybe things aren't going as well as they thought. Maybe AI is coming in and they're worried about losing their job, or they're just not happy in their career or happy in their marriage, or something's wrong,
Yeah, yeah.
dealing with addiction, whatever that case may be. And now they have to reinvent themselves. And then the latter one would be like the age of, maybe 60 plus is, and I call that the cultivate. Now, those are the people that are seasoned veterans of life, and they want to cultivate their experience and share it with others. So that invent, the younger, the
Yeah.
reinvent, and then the cultivate seems
Mhm.
to be the three primary areas that gravitate to this book's
Yeah.
message.
And the cultivate, it's like you're stimulating them to add their thoughts through your website, which is cool.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about I'm still on page 1, by the way, of dedication. And it says, as you read these words, always remember, and this is you writing to your children, as you read these words, always remember that foremost, honor and integrity matter in everything you say and do. Love, Dad. And
Yeah.
it seems like, and I hope it's not true, but it kind of seems like honor and integrity are almost old-fashioned words. What have you found about the way that kind of message resonates with the millennials that are writing back and putting reviews up and things like that?
Yeah. Well, and I think the next generation is way smarter and way more powerful and has way more potential than most are given them credit for. So I mean, I see my kids and their friends. They have a vast array of friends, and they're just rock star young adults. They're gonna contribute greatly to the world and live wonderful lives. So I think that they have strong integrity, and I think it's they're we're Christian. That's a big core part of our family upbringing. My wife homeschooled our kids, so I think that we avoided a lot of the trials and tribulations of public school or even private school. So I think there's a lot of advantages for the kids, but their friends who are both private and public school, and they're not all homeschool kids, I think are tremendous. So I think we should give them a break. I think these kids had it hard. Harder than we did, with the social media and these influences coming from all different angles for them. But they're figuring it out. A lot of them are going offline. They're starting to have control of their social media presence or their screen time. So I am very, very optimistic about the
Oh, that's
future
cool.
of the youth.
How do you balance sort of your sense of, I read in here a little sense of nostalgia because you're quoting John Wayne. And
Yeah.
you and you how you sort of adopted his mantra
Yeah.
as a child. So in fact, I'll read this to the listeners, a quote that you pulled from him from I live most of my life in the wild country. This is from a movie. And you set a code of laws to live by. I won't be wronged. I won't be insulted. I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them. So, there's sort of a nostalgia, but it's also a really practical way to face life. So, how do you balance that with, like, if you're talking about John Wayne and you want to relate to people today, how do you think about that?
Well, I mean that is from John Wayne's last movie, The Shootist, and I was a very young lad in Boston, where I grew up in a very tough environment, and it did set the bar for me. When I watched that movie, of some reason, because I being in a tough environment, inner city Boston, lots of lots of drugs, alcohol, lots of street fighting. I got in 100 different street fights, in my time. It was a very, very tough neighborhood. But the biggest challenge I had, I think, was a mindset of scarcity or lack of abundance. Or it was like a blue collar. Both I'm the first generation American kid. I was destined to be either a plumber, or electrician, which is fine. It's a fine trade, but it was very, very blue collar environment. It was very limiting in thought process. So breaking out of and then and having that issue of, like John Wayne says, I lived in the wild country. It was pretty wild
Yeah.
where I grew up, and
Ah,
that I wouldn't want anyone to lay their hand on me. I don't want them to insult me, and I don't want them to to touch me.
yeah.
So ultimately, I implemented it in my life, and it transformed my life, because then all of a sudden, I had the courage to fight back. I had the courage to have faith in myself and say, I want more than this. Very humble beginnings. Mom was a maid for the wealthy in the MIT and Harvard. She would clean their houses. Dad was a truck driver. So very humble beginnings. Just classic immigrant kid. And so yeah, I was ultimately be able to adopt that and implement it. So I shared it with the readers, and perhaps that's going to be able to help transfer other people's lives, saying, this is my rules to live by. Now, I provide my rules, or my code. I call it the code. I define my code, and I share my code with the readers. But I think the young, or even the at any age, you have to define your own code, what you stand for, what your ethics are, right? What do you believe in, and then have an integrity in everything you say and do is fundamental. And if you deviate from that, then life goes sideways on you pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, it does strike me that conveying your life lessons, just this, you just wrapped up the summary of that, but conveying it using a story about how you grew up, how you had to defend yourself, how you had to, these kind of, like, I would think that would make you relatable and effective in that way, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it seems to be. I mean, it's the best-selling book, and that, people really have related to this life letters, and now it's been referred to as a movement. And it's
Huh.
changing lives, and it's being passed on to others. And the feedback we're getting in Amazon book reviews, or even on our website, or just random emails on how this book has transformed my life, has been it's been encouraging.
Oh, yeah.
It's just fantastic. It's helping to keep me stubbornly young, because
Yeah.
it gives me that motivation, that to be able to, wow, I'm here for a reason. I'm here beyond just try to be the best dad, or the best father, or best friend that I can be. I'm here to help others, and that helps me remain
Yeah.
stubbornly young.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And there is a notion that if you continue to stay, at least in my mind, and you're just expressing it too, that if people like you and me have something that's exciting and that makes us happy to drive forward, right? Then that is a high importance element to staying vibrant, to staying stubbornly young, to staying engaged, right?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
And that's why I encourage all your listeners to go to our website, and again, thelifeletters.com, and join the Wisdom Transfer Platform. At any age or stage you are in life, we all have wisdom. We all have experiences. Again, as I alluded to earlier, I'm one guy with one life experience. I certainly don't
Mm-hmm.
have all the answers, or even most of the answers, but please share. Please
Yeah.
join us. And it's broken down into wealth, wisdom, and happiness topics. So.
Yeah. So anybody can go on to the Wisdom Transfer platform, it's called, and just sign on, just sign in, add your content. And how are you curating that?
I have a virtual assistant that actually manages it and keeps track and makes sure everything is clean and no one's putting anything inappropriate on there. So I have just a small team that manages our website, the WTP, or the Wisdom Transfer Platform, and our
Yep.
newsletter too. So we also launched 4 months ago or so, launched a free newsletter. So I encourage those that go to our website, thelifeletters.com, and join up for our free newsletters.
I read a story and I chose a few of your chapters to look at. And this one was under decisions because I was just interested in hearing it. And another great story, which I think supports the suggestion I had earlier, that stories convey these values, these wisdoms, and so forth, more than just saying them. Tell the story about your encounter with Gary Hart on the bus.
Uh, yeah, yeah.
And first,
Um,
remind us who Gary Hart was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Gary Hart was the front runner and seemed to be the heir apparent for the presidency of the United States. So he ran in the would be 1988. He ran for president in 1988. He was a Democratic senator out of the state of Colorado. And you fast forward 1995, I got a phenomenal job opportunity. I left Boston, moved to Denver, Colorado, where I reside still to this day, some 30 years later. And Gary Hart, 1988. Well, he had an affair. He made a decision. Apparently, he didn't argue with it. He didn't fight it. So I assume he was guilty as charged. But he had a marital affair, and basically got, that late in the stage in 1988. He resigned. He resigned from the race, and then he resigned from the Senate. And so here I am in 7 years later in 1995. I have a job in downtown Denver. And there's Gary Hart sitting on what's called the free mall ride. It's basically a shuttle bus that goes up and down the main drag in downtown Denver. And there he is. And nobody on the bus recognized him. He's very distinct look, a big gray hair and 100% is him. And I'm just sitting there staring at him. And I was still young. I didn't have the courage to go chat with him, and I should have. But here I am staring at him, and nobody on the bus knows who this guy is, right? And 7 years earlier, right, he was the heir apparent to be the president of the United States. And here he is on a free shuttle bus, and no one knows him, right? And he gets off the bus, he starts walking down the street, and I get up, and I'm in awe. And I just watch him as the bus starts pulling away. And he's just an average guy walking down the street, and no one knows who he is. So I use that as a point of reference as the most extreme example of how one bad decision in this case, can alter your life. I mean, literally, 7 years later, if he would got elected, which he was supposed to be, and he got reelected, he would be the president of the United States at that point. Only 7 years later, right? He would still be the president into 8 years. So it was still astonishing to me, and I used that as a point of reference. And I try to do that through, you used the word relatable earlier. I try to do that through all my writings. For book one, and I'm about to release book two later this year, every one of my A through Z letters, each one is 26 chapters, starts off with a story, like the John Wayne story or like the Gary Hart story. So I encourage people to read through it, and I think you'll enjoy the stories. And versus just, it's not me preaching, it's giving you my real life lessons on how I learned that particular topic.
I think that makes sense as a formulaic approach to conveying wisdom. I was struck by one of your, still under the decisions chapter. It says, or you said, don't fall under the mistaken assumption that you can avoid decisions. Indecision is inherently bad decision. I love that. And I think that kind of, that's just one example, but I think that kind of, it's kind of a tidbit, but it really is much, much broader, much more important and impactful than a tidbit, right? But that kind of thing is like, wow, that resonated with me because I've lived my entire life sometimes being indecisive, sometimes, right? And it never works, ever.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. A lot of people try to hide from the reality, and they were like, "Well, if I don't make any decisions, if I just wait to make that investment, or I wait to start that business, or or ask that girl out or that guy out, or whatever the case may be, all of these, or hey, let's stay relevant to this. Be that older parent that is a parent or grandparent that's afraid to transfer their wisdom to their children. Right? The timing's not right.
Hmm.
Well, those are all indecisions, right? You're
Yeah.
deciding not
Yeah.
to decide. You're deciding not to
Hmm.
decide. And most people don't hold themselves accountable for their indecisions. They know like, oh, I made that decision and it either worked or it didn't work. And they beat themselves up if it didn't work. Like I made a bad decision, a bad investment, or I said something inappropriate. I made a bad
Hmm.
decision.
Hmm.
But very few people hold themselves accountable for their indecisions. And I think that's where most of the damage happens.
That's brilliant, actually, really brilliant. I've made some, because I've been lamenting, actually, I've made some bad financial decisions in the course of my life, and where I've lost, you know, sizable amounts of money, nothing crippling, but, and then I've made really good decisions in which I've made money. But I think what I really haven't reminisced about is the indecisions that have probably cost me more than I lost from bad decisions.
Absolutely, you're spot on. You're spot on, and that's what I'm trying to bring to light is those indecisions. Where what are you sitting on the fence on? What are you waiting for? Right, and almost always, most of the decisions, especially when they're well thought out, are going to work out well. Right, they're going to pan out well. But you just have to have the courage to jump. To be
Yeah.
able to make that move. So. Yeah, that's the decisions, the
Mm,
A through Z, the D decisions letter, and there we get in a lot more detail, but that's
yeah.
one of the points. Yeah.
Yes. Now, how do you avoid preaching versus sharing? You used the word preaching earlier, but
Yeah.
how do you think about, like, I don't want to preach. People don't listen to people preaching, wisdom. They want to engage. How do you manage that fine line?
Yeah, well, I guess I've always been a kind of a natural storyteller. I've been told that by enough people, and even when I was in corporate America and this, VP of sales or CEO of this company, that company, I would be on stage often all over the world, traveling all over every nook and cranny of the world you could think of for business. And most people go up and talk about speeds, and because I'm in a technology industry, speeds and feeds, and where our technology is better than their technology. I tell stories, right? So I think what makes what where you don't come across as preaching if you share personal stories and you say, my experience of this, or in the corporate, I'd be like, our clients, a specific client that is most relevant to you, the client, this is
Hmm.
what they have experienced through this. And I'll just tell a story. And this is the value they got by making this investment. So making it about the added value
Hmm.
in either the business context or even a personal context, and share a story on what makes you credible. And if you can tell a story that's relatable and the person listening goes, yeah, I can see that. I can put myself in your shoes and understand that, and then I instantly respect your opinion, and I'm more apt to listen to it because you gave me a relatable story versus here's the three rules, and you got to follow these rules, and blah 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 blah
Hmm.
blah. And most people don't listen to rules, but they do love stories.
Huh. Okay. On that note, think about if you think about all of the mantra life lessons, like, which one resonates the very most for you? Like a lesson that you learned. Which one is that? And how'd you learn it?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Out of the 26 letters, are the 26
That's
different
right.
topics that we have?
Out of the thousands of bits of wisdom that you share in your book, like,
Yeah.
which one comes to mind that you love sharing the most?
Oh man. Um, But you got me in the spot here, but that's good. If I had to pick one, the one that I've probably struggled with the most is being in a perpetual state of gratitude. Right. So I have been guilty for most of my life, and writing this book series, has really helped me mature, as an individual. And I think bringing gratitude in my attitude, bringing gratitude to,
Mm,
putting gratitude in my attitude on everything I do, and not focused, on what I used to be focused on. Is like in the past, I'd be like the trials and tribulations of the challenges I had in the past, or the anxiety about the future. And I wasn't present. I wasn't as present as I should be. So if I had
mm,
to say, the one I struggled with the most and where I matured as an individual, as the author, was being a perpetual state of gratitude. Regardless of what life throws at me, the good and the bad. Now I'm in a I just understand. I'm grateful for being alive. I'm grateful to have my health. I'm grateful for my family's health. Right. Everything is okay, and I'm going to be able to work through this. So being a perpetual state of gratitude, I think, was fundamental. And I also feel gratitude is the most empowering and most powerful emotion that humans can feel, because once you're in a state of gratitude, you're in a state of I have enough, right? I have enough. This is enough of what I have today. I'm not in the perpetual state of looking for more. Right? That more that never comes, that bigger house, that faster car, that more money, whatever the case may be. So being in that state of gratitude, I think, is transformational. And it is, and I guess that's something. Gratitude is the most transformational emotion you can have. Yeah.
Huh, that's so cool. It's funny too that you mentioned that, because one of my earliest guests on Stubbornly Young is a guy named Chris Shembra, who lives in New York City, and he's become labeled as the gratitude guru. And he speaks all over the world. Nice guy. And posts a lot on LinkedIn about gratitude. And so I'm glad you brought that up again, because now I'm going to go back and re-listen to that episode with Chris.
You have to meet Chris.
Yeah. I'll send you some info so you can find him. I was going to share one lesson with you for your input. I have not put it on your website yet, but the most repeatable, and now my kids repeat it, which is like, I'm grateful for that they hear it. But I had a wealthy, successful uncle who I worked for a while. And one time I messed up and I said, wow, I learned my lesson. He goes, nope, you haven't learned your lesson till you do it right the next time. And I think about that often. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that comes down to like just accountability, right? Accountability is, and that's why I start off the first chapter in the book is A through Z. A is accountability, because that starts with that, is holding yourself accountable for your, your decisions and your indecisions, right? For what you did or didn't do. But ultimately, I agree with that advice. And when you hold yourself accountable and you take action, even if you fall short, right, get back up and go do it again until you get it right.
Yeah. Last question for you. And that is there some piece of wisdom that after you published your book, you thought, I should have had it in there?
Oh man. Yeah. A lot. That's why I have book 2 and 3. This is actually a book series. Yeah. No, it's the wisdom. The whole premise of transferring wisdom is, you got to pick your lanes. And even when I was writing the book, I didn't plan on doing A through Z. I just started writing, and I actually wrote 3 books at the same time, but then I broke them down into 3 different topics, right? So what am I trying? I'll stick with the A's. What am I trying to say here is, A is A in book 1 is accountability. In book 2, it's about asking for things. You have to ask. You can get rejected, but ask would bring value in your asking, like bring added value. Mm-hmm. And then book 3 is taking action. So that's an example of 3 A's for book 1, 2, and 3. But that applied. Actually, I was writing that. I started writing when I had a near-death experience, which is the first story in the book. And when I survived that, I came home and I started writing a letter. That's why it's life letters. And that turned into, that 1 page turned to 50, turned to 500. And as I was writing these pages, it started to get a theme. So I started breaking it down into alphabetical. So.
Oh, yeah. So listeners, I won't share the story because you should get the book to do that. But it's really a compelling story. And it does, in the way you described it, it is something that could have ended very differently.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, but it takes place in Colorado, which I appreciate because we both live here. Hey, I think let's wrap up on that note, Ed. Thanks. This is episode 24 of the Stubbornly Young podcast for people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who want to remain engaged in the world and relevant to the younger people in their lives. Ed McCarthy, glad you could join me on Stubbornly Young and that you self-identify this way too.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. Stubbornly. Keep fighting. Keep fighting the good fight.
That's right. Hey, I'm Dave Tabor. If you've got friends and family who are stubbornly young, please recommend that they give it a listen. And if you've got ideas for episodes and contents or people that I ought to be speaking with, let me know at dave@stubbornlyyoung.com. Glad you're joining me on this journey.